We will start off with setting the context perhaps for the next half hour to 45 minutes. After that, you will have an opportunity to ask questions, but of course, don't be shy to ask the platform to place these questions beforehand. But without further ado, let me just say that we have the Pasquale Bisogno, who is the Deputy Head of Performance and Decarbonization at D'Amico. D'Amico needs no introduction, and he is today accompanied by Salvatore Castellano, who is the Head of Decarbonization at Cofco International, based here in Geneva. We have Louise Nielsen, who is the head of sales at StormGeo. And last but not least, we have the analyst from Equinor, Orestis, Bakas. And my name is Voytek Chelkowski. I am with Seamind Blue Ocean, and I also wear the other hat, IMD. Perhaps I will offer you the floor, starting with you, Pasquale. Maybe you say a few words about you yourself, and where do you find yourself within the context of FuelEU Maritime?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. So thank you, Voytek, for the presentation, and BS Group for the invitation. I am Pasquale Bisogno, Deputy Head of Performances and Decarbonization in D'Amico Shipping. D'Amico is a medium-sized owner company. We mainly manage tankers, vessels, and bulk carrier, but with our ship management in Singapore is Shima, International Ship Management, we are managing also third-party vessels, so we cover a quite big range of type of vessels, including passengers vessels, LNG, livestock, and container vessels mostly. We are, as D'Amico, trying to understand how to face this new regulation that is going in parallel with ETS, and together with all panelists today, we are trying to brainstorm and to find the best solution to go ahead.
Thank you so much. Who would like to go next? Julie, may I offer you the floor to say a few words about yourself and how do you find yourself?
Surely you can. I'm Julie Nielsen. I'm the global head of bunker sales for StormGeo, the software provider and hopefully one of those who can assist you on this journey, which you are having in front of you of the future fuels. So the software solution I am in charge of is assisting the bunker buyers on their bunker management, and what we would like to do is, of course, to ease up the workflows and the admin stuff, which is also becoming more and more with the new fuels coming into force, with certifications and so on. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Salva, over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Salvatore Castellano. I'm Freight Manager Decarbonization of Cofco International. We are a grain. We are in the grain business supply chain, focusing on grain, oilseed, and sugar mainly. I'm part of the freight team, and the scope is to basically analyze and see the impact of the decarbonization journey on the freight and on the supply chain, and optimize the performance and minimize the CO2 emission, together with managing the ETS and FuelEU and all the further regulation which impact basically the volatility and the percentage on the freight.
And before I go to Orestis, let me just give Salvatore an extra credit, because he really embodies the flexibility of a good freight trader and now the head of decarbonization, because we were going to be joined this afternoon by Daniel Ortelli from Ship Energy, who, because of family emergency, could not join us. And I called my good friend Salva, and he was right there on the spot. So kudos to you for that. Really appreciate it, and very happy to have you on board. Last but not least, Orestis, can you say a few words about it?
Yes, good afternoon all. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you all for joining. My name is Orestis Bakas, and I'm the senior shipping analyst in Equinor, on the team that focuses on the global market analysis. But before you hear analysis and you all get a bit stiff, I do have an operations background. So I have been 10 years operations. So now it's very interesting with the new regulation and generally with the shipping environment to be a part in shipping. But touching on the regulations, we have EU ETS, FuelEU, possibly IMO coming with a carbon tax. So these are all regulations that will shape the nature of the future, and we are focusing to see how these regulations will change the markets, how this regulation will change the fuel mix and support the business. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And if I could take a minute just to share my background and what my role in this panel will be. I am the managing partner of Seamind Blue Ocean. We are change management consultants, very much operating at the cusp of maritime business and change on the one hand, and I'm also the leadership and executive coach at Institute of Management Development in Lausanne, and I have been in the physical shipping business for more than 2 decades as a seaman, as an owner, as a shipbroker. And 10 years back, I went into change management, and for the last 4 years, very much heavily involved in everything that has to do with ESG and the many changes that the shipping industry is going through. So very pleased to be here, and thank you so much for BS Navigation for the invite to moderate this panel. Now, just a few days ago, when I was thinking about setting the context for this panel, I spoke with a good friend in Singapore who manages performance for a large Greek owner, and he shared with me words of wisdom which resonated with me deeply. That is to say that FuelEU Maritime is a little bit like quantum mechanics. That is to say, everybody talks about it, but very few people seem to be able to understand it. And then with that in mind, I thought that maybe there is no better way to start our discussion but to publish a poll to basically gauge the degree of familiarity with FuelEU Maritime of the audience. And then I think they will set the tone and set the context. So voila, let's okay, so how familiar are you with the FuelEU Maritime regulation? Very familiar, somewhat familiar, not familiar. Please vote now, including the panelists. Okay. I think a few people are still voting. Okay. So probably maybe in the panel we have the very familiar ones and the somewhat familiar. Okay, overwhelming majority. Okay. Well, that gives us a nice feel for the audience. I think majority is somewhat familiar, and we can presume that it matters. So let's just close this poll. And then we go to, and then let's just publish the next poll, which is also going to give us the gauge of what it is that matters to the audience most. What do you see as the biggest challenge in optimizing bunker procurement under FuelEU Maritime? Compliance with regulations, cost management, fuel availability, technological upgrades, or environmental impact? Please vote now. Okay, it seems that fuel availability, almost half of the respondents see fuel availability as the biggest challenge. Well, it's not without the reason that we have in the title, Countdown for Optimizing Bunker Procurement. Okay, great. What do panelists think? I mean, that sort of, nicely gives us the feel for the audience and for what matters to them. I'd like to set a helicopter view, for lack of better word, for our discussion, which is, why don't we speak, maybe perhaps use as a point of reference Dummies Guide for FuelEU Maritime, what it is, why it matters, and how we deal with that. So who could start off with, bringing some clarity of and sharing with the audience what FuelEU Maritime is, what it is not, and perhaps, as I recall from our discussion before the panel, maybe just set the difference between FuelEU Maritime and EU ETS. I'm curious, Pasquale, whether you could take a lead on that. We can't hear you. I think you're muted. Let's.
At the beginning, when we approach both regulations, of course, the first thinking was, oh my God, we have two regulations that are speaking about the same topic. But at the end, when you go in deep, you understand that both regulations are complementary each other. And basically, EU ETS is merely a tax that is applied on tank to wake. The big difference is that it's applied on tank to wake. Instead, FuelEU Maritime is taking into consideration the life cycle of let's say, fuel. So it's a well to wake approach. And ETS is merely on energy savings and vessel operation optimization. Instead, the FuelEU Maritime has been put in place in order to promote the employment of renewable fuels. And we start with the emissions of 2020, taking in consideration the intensity, GHG intensity of fuel. So we start from a starting point that is 91.16 gram of CO2 per megajoule, where per CO2 equivalent we take in consideration the sum of CO2 plus nitrous oxide and methane. The regulation is enforced like ETS, so we have vessels over 5,000 gross tonnage coming in EU, so under MRV scope, with the same approach of ETS, so 50% on in and out voyages plus 100% for voyages in EU plus port stay. There is a reduction scheme over the years. So we have a batch of 5 years by 5 years. So we start by 2025 up to 2029. and after we go until 2050, 5 years by 5 years. So the enforcement is having a reduction of 2%, starting from 19.16 gram of CO2 equivalent per megajoule, coming to 2030 of 6%, and 2035 14.5, up to 2050 80%. When we talk about renewable fuels, we go from let's say biofuels feedstock nowadays mostly on second generation that is also sustainable, up to let's say the majority of fuel that now are not very much available, like e-fuels. A small note for passenger vessels that are calling EU from 2030, they are enforced to have onshore power supply for port stay over 2 hours in 10 TENT, so-called TENT ports. So wherever it is available in those ports, they have to have available this onshore power supply. Big change from ETS is also who is the responsible. So there is a big challenge also in BIMCO discussions, because for ETS, as we all know, the responsible is the owner that can pass the responsibility to dock holder. Instead, for FuelEU Maritime, the responsible is dock holder. That unlikely at the same time is not, for the majority of the cases, is not the fuel chooser. So from here we understand how the cooperation from for owners and charters should be very important in order to, let's say, comply with the regulations. For the penalty, of course, there is the possibility to go for money payment. That, comparing with the EU ETS in the paths up to 2050, is very costly comparing to ETS. And otherwise there is some other option of compliance that we call borrowing, banking, or pooling. With the banking, if you have a surplus, you can bring your banking in the next years. With the borrowing, you can borrow, let's say, the difference that you have from the target, and the next year you are going to pay 10% of interest rate on those borrow. Otherwise, you have pooling, and this is a nice choice on which we are very much working on. You can pool with all vessels, calling MRV, any kind of vessels. So container can pool with livestock vessels, as far as the compliance balance sum is positive. Of course, very important to note that is, let's say, the penalty, the enforcement of penalty, the calculation is regulated by FuelEU Maritime as 2,400 euro per various sulfur tons equivalent of energy. But the pooling mechanism is not enforced by regulation, so it's not regulated. And we see in the D'Amico that the pooling can be an opportunity at the end. As you can share in the market your surplus, and these have to be seen as an opportunity in the following years. The timeline, you should have the monitoring plan by August 31st, and by January 2025, that is the, let's say, the emission here, you need to submit your reports, and by 31st of March you have to declare your option and your potential pooling, and by 1st June you are going to, let's say, informed by the verifier that in the pooling case should be the same one for all, let's say, vessel in the pool. So you are informed about the penalty in accordance with your compliance option, and by 30 June you are going to get your doc of FuelEU Maritime. I believe that's all from my side. Of course, there are many ways to comply with, like wind power, propulsion power. and there are different mechanisms in accordance with the ratio of propulsion on top of, let's say, propulsion power. So also OPS is an option. So maybe later we can see option by option what D'Amico is doing and try to understand whether it's the right way or not.
Thank you for that. Is that it? That sounds quite a lot. It sounds like whoever is in charge needs to be a chemical engineer, a lawyer, and a shipping specialist. That you have to work on currently many hats. To be honest with you, I mean, this is wonderful introduction, but I actually feel it's a lot, huh? It's a lot. So I'm going to right now rely on other panelists to try to, I don't know, for lack of better word, digest it and translate it into, take us to the, so now we have the big picture of what it is. Actually, it's more than the big picture, you know, with lots of details. So let's now take it to the next level. That is to say, discuss why it matters. And I think we can, you know, with Salva, Julie, and Orestis on board, we can take it, you know, in various directions. So, for example, I'm curious, Orestis, on your take. You know, what are the implications on the pricing of bunkers at one point? On the one hand, on the other hand, for Julie, I'm curious about your take on the implications for the bunker procurement from the user perspective. And last but not least, then I would take it to Salva. To actually, I'm curious, you know, how prepared do you feel you are, and you know, how you're dealing with this complexity. So these are, I think, that would be the next round of questions on, you know, why it matters. Who of you would like to take it on fast? Perhaps Julie. How about if I take it to you and maybe take all of the information and let's look at the bunker procurement as it is today and the bunker procurement as and when FuelEU Maritime is fully introduced.
Sure. Well, I guess we can all agree that the bunkers is only becoming more and more complex to buy. I mean, it's not like just 5-10 years back where it was a few products available out there, and then you basically just bought what you needed and then you moved on. So the procurement, at least, is becoming more and more complex, and I'm also foreseeing that, I mean, all the certifications and regulations which is attached to the future fuels is definitely going to be a challenge for the buyers out there. And I think it's important to also ask yourself, are you really ready at this stage to continue as you normally do with your bunker procurement, or do you need an extra tool or some extra hands to keep track of all these new regulations and certifications attached to the future fuels?
Thank you for that. Okay, so the message I'm getting from you is the degree of complexity is going to, when it comes to bunker procurement, is going to shoot up. And the second thing that what I'm hearing is, okay, is everybody aware of what's happening? And as you know, later on we go to this Kubler change curve, and then perhaps see where the audience is with that. And then perhaps I'll give you the hint for the next question. So if it's going to become more complex, the next question would be, you know, what could be the strategies that you, your position, could offer? But Orestis, if I can take it to you as a shipping analyst, a market analyst, what would be your expectations on the real impact on the markets, bunker prices, especially forward?
I sympathize a lot with Julie and her effort to try to assist, because putting now a bunker price on the alternative fuels or even on the bio, it can be really difficult. We are talking about, for example, the biofuels that are quite high. There's just competition from other industries. So it's quite difficult to see what the prices will be. And right now, from like all the operators that we had, like during the Posidonia event, they were saying that with the current bunker prices, it's better to, on the bio or the alternative fuel, is better to pay the penalty rather than actually procuring these alternative fuels. I do hope that since part of the FuelEU EU ETS will be for EU to give funds back to the industry, whether it is with subsidizing, someone put on the comment about the port infrastructure, which is a big thing about bunkering and even electrification. So to assist the green prices, but also to assist the to reduce the prices when it comes to incentives on bio that they can go over there, that can be used in shipping. So it's a very difficult. There will be high cost, but then it's a matter of the operating and the owners know how to do a good cost exercise, plus and minus, and that will be the case for the near future at least.
Okay, that's very interesting. Okay, so we probably will have to discuss maybe in more granular detail on the strategies on how to deal with those future market fluctuations. But I think this would be a good timing. I have another question for a poll to see what the audience believes will be the impact on bunker prices. So let me just publish this poll. So how do you anticipate the cost of bunker fuels will change in response to FuelEU Maritime regulations? Significantly increase, slightly increase, remain the same, slightly decrease, significantly decrease? Well, please vote now. Okay, so definitely on the increase, but yeah, the jury is still out whether it's going to be slight or significant. It's almost at par. Very interesting. Well, the winner is significantly increases is the winner, but perhaps it's not going to be. Some people believe that maybe it's not going to be as dramatic as may seem for the moment. Salva, may I take it to you with all the input so far, with the detailed details of FuelEU Maritime as Pasquale laid it out, and Julie's and Orestis' take on that, and what you hear from the polls, but most importantly, your experience. How prepared do you feel you are? And what's your take on the whole thing? Looking at that through the lens of your position as a head of decarbonization at Cofco.
Hi. So let's put it in this way. So first of all, thank you so much for Pasquale to give us such a comprehensive explanation about the actual law, which I had to say was very very interesting to see on a different point of view. And of course, for the other guys to give the view on the supply and the expectation on the actual bunker market. Now, to answer the straight question, how prepared and what is our opinion on the actually FuelEU regulation? I would say we are still, or personally, I'm still trying to forge my idea. and looking on a different angle of the different regulation, I think it's very important to point out the influence this regulation will have on the cost of transports. And finally, to us as a final user, the increase on the cost that will have on our day-to-day life, such as whatever we buy in the supermarket, as we know, then everything gets transported mainly by sea. So, in terms of a general view, we could say that on the basis of the current study, for the first 5 years, in effect, the increase of the FuelEU regulation should be that on a let's say on an average calculation about between 100 and 150 euro per metric tons increasing cost on the normal VLSFO. In terms of cargo transport, let's say on a general cargo of corn from Brazil to Europe, will have an impact of about $1 on the freight. So even if this could see as a small impact, of course, with pass of the year that will increase more and more. And as Orestis was mentioned, I think the general initial approach will be that with the cost of the alternative fuel sky high, probably for the beginning, the general approach will be to pay the penalties, as well as that the big question is whether when this fuel will be available. One of the things to clarify as well that today, when we are saying about buying and supply biofuel on a certain route or for a certain cargo, does not strictly means that that commodity or that particular cargo will be transported with the biofuel, but simply said that eventually, sometime during the chain or on the next distribution, this biofuel will be used and so accounted into the matter. So in terms as well of how and how fast this regulation will pick up and will be increased, I think ultimately will be will be price effective, and it will be on the appetite and the of the people to pay the price for have the goods moved, basically, because of course that will the implication of this regulation will eventually come up on increasing of the final product. So at the end, it's going to be a supply-demand equilibrium, and the demand will increase only if the supply will increase only if there is a demand, basically.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for that. So I take it, okay, first and foremost, you're still trying to forge the view. It's very much ongoing process. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, you believe that the supply and demand forces will work it out and will survive. But with that in mind, I'm curious, and that's the question to you, and also to Pasquale, and for Julie, maybe looking at this through your lens. What kind of strategies you are already, pondering about or maybe implementing to prepare your company to deal with that, to be a little bit ahead of the game rather than playing a catch-up? Pasquale, could I take it to you perhaps first? You are muted, Pasquale.
Sorry. I'm very much in line with Salvatore's statement. Basically, you should understand very well what is your emission impact. So nowadays, understanding your, let's say, emissions is not only good for your legal compliance, but also business critical. So what we are doing now, let's say, with our customers, because we are having, let's say, we try to have same approach as, let's say, charters, because we have also vessels under spot, for which D'Amico is the charterer. And we have vessels, of course, in time charter out with external charters. So we try to inform our view with our charters and try to plan with them what is the potential emission that we are going to have in MRV voyages, and try to understand what is the best option to comply with. But let's talk about the vessel managed by D'Amico. So what we are doing is, what we see is the big shift from bunkering at spot to bunkering by batch. So one of our, let's say, strategy is to understand where the vessel is going, so understand the availability of fuel, and try to understand how much is the quantity that we need in order to cover the compliance of one vessel. If we have an opportunity, we can also pool vessels that are trading in EU in non-convenient ports. So basically, we have a set of 20 plus vessels that we manage, and we try to have the full picture in order to have a few vessels that are pulling the other vessels. So for one vessel, according to our studies, we would need as used cook oil B30 almost 15% of total fuel burn in a year on very low sulfur fuel oil base. Instead, if we have the opportunity to burn HVO used cook oil B100, we are going on an average of 3%. So we are talking about on overall consumption, really about something that you can afford. So if you have a good plan, you can cover all vessels that are trading in EU, basically. With a big cost saving, of course.
Salva, would you like to build on that and maybe share a little bit on the strategies that you're
right now, for what regarding, we more or less are following and doing all the study as Pasquale just mentioned, not only, but looking some project as well, like installation of other device, like wind device, in order to basically netting let's say our demand, as well as different discussion in terms of pooling with other company. One of actually of the big let's say difficulties we are facing as a truly charter, we don't own any vessel. We have a commitment of vessel and a long period, but a very big difference we have in comparing to Pasquale is that not even if decarbonization is a very important topic for everybody, on a time charter vessels, we still have some doubt of difficulties in have owner approval in trying these biofuel products. Maybe just because the let's say the industry is not ready yet, and perhaps because the standardization of this particular type of biofuel, it just came out last month, so it's still pretty much a big learning curve or studying stage as well for our owner, which we have a relationship. So yeah, that's of course the performance and the planning is playing a crucial role in this journey, I would say.
Thanks for that. Really, if I could
jump a bit, Voytek, on something.
yeah,
Although
sure.
it's not, it's interesting to hear the strategies being basically becoming more, having a more efficient shipping, like taking the data and like StormGeo was giving weather routing and fuel consumption underperformance for a long time. But now we're focusing, because it's not on a claim or dispute between an owner and charterer, now it's becoming a bit focused. So a lot of the things that the industry is doing now is actually looking at the fundamental efficiencies that we should have already been doing, basically, and actually trying to implement it, because we have a regulation now. It's not just an owner and charterer fighting. But then another comment that I would like to add is, because I will forget it later, but maybe that's why I want to add it now, is that we all need to plan, but we need to remember that these regulations will change soon again. So one of the things that we need to do is to be, okay, of course to plan, but to be flexible, because most of them, we have EU ETS, CII next year is going to be reviewed. EU ETS will be, FuelEU will be. So all of them are a bit on a trial and hopefully success and not an error basis.
So let me build on this. Because I was going to actually ask Julie how StormGeo's role and the platform that you have is changing, as a result of that. How do you support companies like Cofco or D'Amico with the technology, with your business model? And then after that, I'll take it to you, Orestis. I'm curious whether it has any effect on Equinor, a way in which you can add value working with the companies, helping them prepare for that. Julie.
Sure. Well, we definitely try, or we have a platform already supporting the EU ETS. We also do it in our newest solution, which is the bunker management for the buyers, the bunker procurement system. And it's, of course, something which we always need to be ahead of all these regulations and having the software in place before the regulations coming into force, so that we of course have for the EU ETS and also EUAs now. I would, if I can just make a few comments as well to what has been said now, because Salvatore correctly said the industry is not ready. I think it's because, as we also mentioned in the beginning, that everybody talks about it, but no one really takes a decision, and everybody takes or everybody wants to invent the wheel which is already there, and trying to be a little smarter than the competitor, which is completely fine. But I just think this is so complex. So if we are not assisting each other in choosing a direction, then it will be hard for everybody to comply to it, because fuels is not available, or it is, but it's also hard for the refineries. I'm coming from a refinery background as well as an oil trader. It's hard for the refineries to decide which product are they going to produce, or do the changes in the refinery to produce new fuels, right? Because then some people want the methanol, some believes in ammonia, some believes to stick to the bio 30, some believes on the bio 100. So I think if you as an industry stand together now and agree on something instead of waiting for all the regulations to come in, then I think it's better to be on top of everything right now, because as Orestis is also correctly saying, this is only the beginning. I mean, more will be added along the way. And then, of course, we as StormGeo can build a platform as to fit into the industry, but our solution is also a result of what we hear and see in the market. So if we also see mixed signals out there, then it's also hard for us to go in a specific direction to the industry. So yeah, again, as I started out with saying, it's becoming more and more complex on the bunker industry. I also think that's why we suddenly also see the sea levels having more attention to bunkers and more than what they have had in the future or in the past, which is needed and very interesting to see, I think.
Well, thank you. So perhaps I'll take your question, the questions that you posed to Orestis, since he has a broad market overview. What do you think, Orestis, would it take for the industry actually to get together and actually, I don't know, create a demand signal? What stands in the way, as you see it?
The way I see it is that these regulations and the environment, general environment, like creates, we had the COVID before, creates a perfect opportunity for the industry to sit together and discuss. Julie said it perfectly. It's not, no one can do it alone. And Salvatore and Pasquale, they're facing this issue between charterers and owners. So it's not, and I will include also shippers and cargo owners and receivers and ports. I know it sounds too ambitious, but in order to have a demand on the fuel, in order to see how the industry will manage to achieve the targets, because regardless of if the regulations are ambiguous or difficult to understand, the scope is there. This is what we want to achieve. And now we need to be open, we need to be transparent. If I've heard companies need to start, to the level that they can, sharing information, sharing data in order to be able to achieve. This is the only way that we can see, we can have a signal. And of course, I do appreciate the challenges that like D'Amico may be facing, being on the bulk and on the gas oil tankers market, because they're not containers. They don't have routes. They don't have big clients that also have a green agenda to follow. So yeah, I do feel the difficulties in terms of the trade environment that there some segments are, and that is how this on some areas will be a bit of a slower transition compared to segments that they have more established routes, more established customers, that they are more in connection with the client, with the final consumer, with the ports.
But what would be the catalyst that actually will, because that sounds great, but then, you know, specifically, how are we going to actually see it happen, right? To bring people, because you have different players that are acting independently in the marketplace, the owners and the charters and whatnot. And, you know, the ideal picture that all makes sense, but this is the industry, especially the dry bulk, for, you know, where information has the value and is one of the bases to, you know, to build the margin. So how do you actually overcome that?
Well, I don't want to be the pessimist and say that the shipping has always introducing something new after an accident. So I don't know whether the cost element is enough. I was reading a study that perhaps for the EU ETS, when it was introduced, it was $100. There was people, analysts were saying that perhaps it can be $600 in order to drive the decarbonization. I think it needs to be a joint venture. That I'm waiting to see how the IMO will introduce something, because it cannot be only specific in Europe. That creates, in fact, already a challenge. So perhaps that can be a catalyst if IMO introduce a global CO2 tax, that I would hope to take the existing, not to be on top. So we need to have a global approach on this.
Okay. So your take is that we need to have a pricing signal, the level playing field, the CO2 tax, as an example. I'm right now sharing the presentation. Is everybody seeing the slides? Yeah. So I just wanted to take it to this Kubler-Ross change curve for those of you who are not familiar with that. On the left, you have a very famous Swiss psychiatrist who spent 50 years working with dying people, and not long after she died, the big consulting firms came together and figured, when it comes to industry change, organizational change, or any other change, the process more or less follows the same curve. So I'm curious, Julie and Pasquale, Orestis, Salva, where you see it, from the industry level, looking at FuelEU Maritime, where do you see your clients or industry on that curve? Within the context that we've just discussed. Starting with you, Julie. I like the smile so well. Smile.
Thank you.
Are we at the beginning, or are we integrating or denying?
Well, I'm definitely, I definitely see and hear that we are still in this maybe in between denial and frustration still, and of course some has moved already to the integration or the decision and integration phase, but I do see that it's more the bigger companies who is maybe in the decision and integration phase, because they do have the money behind to take action, and maybe also the platforms to move forward fast. But definitely, I think we are still in a denial and frustration phase where we tend to think that we can still do the work like we have done as always. And just a comment to Orestis' comment as well. I also think it's important to highlight that this is not only the transparency and the cooperation among the different companies, but also definitely within the companies, right? Because suddenly it's not only the operation department and technical department who is involved in a bunkering or a bunker procurement desk. It's at some states also the legal and especially the chartering, because the chartering needs to deep dive into more into the operational stuff than what they have been used to in the past. So it's definitely interesting to see how all these silo working styles will be working and looking after 25. So yeah, but that's at least my take on it. I don't really see that. I haven't met at least someone in the depression zone as well. Otherwise, they are really good at hiding it. But I do see that it's in either the right or the left side.
Okay. Salva, what do you think? May we ask you, where are you on the curve, or just with you the industry? I mean, whatever.
I would say that we are at the bottom of the curve, i.e. between the depression and the experiment. And that would be mainly, it depends on which side of the industry you are. As an example, as we have Pasquale, which is coming from an owner company, and they have to plan in advance. Perhaps they approach the matter before, where as a charter we have the luxury in a way to just pay the bill at the end of the day. What will probably drive the change, as is been discussed and probably what is stopped as well, that there is no clear direction or right and wrong answer. So the experiment probably is the most important phase, and is the one which takes more time, because making the decision, or even making the wrong decision but for the good purpose, or for the right experiment, makes sense to do it. I mean, as shipping and history teach us, shipping is very good in adjust. And probably this is one of the biggest and advantage culturally in our business. Of course, will be difficult, will come as a price, but probably we should even stated one thing, which is why we are doing that. We are doing that for our own benefit of reducing the CO2, and this is a benefit for everybody. So as you say, we need to start to work together, which is again comes as a new in our industry. It's especially on the bulk and the dry. The different side, the different department of the business is always been very good segregated. Now we are in the stage that we have to collaborate and sometimes sacrifice as well profit. So yeah, I would say that we are between these two.
Well, thank you. I'd like to stress this element of experiment that you mentioned, because I think the value of it cannot be understated. As they say, if you don't get what you want, you get the experience. And so being, on the learning curve, as the Cargill, when they went into wind assisted propulsion, they have this motto: test, 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 learn, learn, learn. And they are moving them ahead on the curve. I have another framework for change management that I will share with you, which is so relevant within this context. But thank you so much, Salva. Pasquale, what's your take? Where do you find yourself or the industry as a whole on the curve?
Yeah, actually, as per my experience, it depends very much with whom you are dealing with. Also on this, we are quite lucky to deal with different charters, big, small, and we see different approach. Of course, if you have, let's say, if you are dealing with big charters with a big department that is doing these studies or is taking consultancy by analysts, so it's very easy to understand each other. Of course, what I see nowadays, we are facing a big move from burning somebody else's rubbish to try to burn fuels just produced for us. So it's also changing of approach. Before we were quite, how to say, no stressed because the fuel was everywhere available. Nowadays we have a big competition from other industries. That is also an issue nowadays. So aviation, automotive. So it's a different way to look into the bunkering process. As owner, of course, to stay well in the market, we are always we have tried to burn biofuel a long time back, and of course giving availability on our tonnage of burning at least B30. So we are already testing B40, B50 to give a choice to our charters and of course to our chartering inside department. As I see anyway, one of the mover is also on ESG statement. So regardless you are trading in MRV voyages or not, I see very much interesting from chartering in burning different kind of fuels other than fossil fuels. So in order to reduce the carbon footprint. So of course, if we would have a regulation, international regulation, for sure it could be easier because unless you are trading on, let's say, on same voyages, for us that we are trading on tram business, it's very hard to plan, to plan a strategy. So it could be easier if you have an international regulation and not only regional. So it could be clear for everybody. But anyway, to be optimist, I see a different, let's say, approach than ETS. So I remember that in January 2024, some charters they were saying, ETS is there. What is ETS on January, February, March? So also from the industry, I see a different approach. They are moving earlier. Also, BIMCO clauses are starting already in April for ETS, not before September, October last year. So, you know, we need also to adopt our industry to different way to see traditional things where we were used at.
So if you were to make a call, experiment, so you're optimistic, so between experiment decision or
actually experiments on biofuels we have done quite earlier, let's see, in 2021, 2022. Of course, as you said before, until when you don't have real experience on the field, burning on a constant way certain kind of fuels, on facing the compliance, pooling, so on and so forth, banking. So it will be very challenging to understand in advance how to adjust yourself. So we are proactive. We try to be proactive, but of course we need, as many of you already said, cooperation with the charterer. And one of the big, I would say, change that I see is that with the charterers as owner, it's better to don't have asymmetric information of performances. So it's better to disclose earlier to show what is your, let's say, carbon footprint on vessels in order to cooperate in advance before the voyage is starting and not challenging afterward.
Thank you. Orestis, over to you. Your take on the curve, because you perhaps come from a different angle, working with the whole industry. What's your take on that?
And also, I will play a bit the moderator, because now I like to ask an owner and a charter a bit on this take. So I think if we look on the tanker market, I will think that they are more or less on the wait, listen, and try to support. That's why we see orders being made. Like I think on the order book, 50% of the tankers are set or will be set for alternative fuel. So they saw that the industry is trying to support. Whether they will actually do all the retrofits in order, like a bit later, in order to have ammonia, methanol, you name it, then it's still way to be seen. But I will have a bit to disagree with Pasquale when it comes to that the industry is more have a different approach, because what I have seen from talks with industry participants, especially on the charterer side, so that's why, is that since they are not so late involved on that, because they're doing the calculations in order to pass this cost to the shipper. So they are already involved, but they are not so much on the communication. So I do feel that at least in the short term, that the regulations don't have this huge effect cost-wise, and I think that the charterers still feel that they can push this cost to the shipper, the penalty to the shipper, being competitive on the with the other operating or charterers, but also that this will not affect the society, with burden the society with a high increase on the cost. That's why I feel the charters are still a bit on the denial phase. I don't know what's your take on that, Salvatore, if you don't mind me asking, Voytek.
No, I don't think we are on the denial phase. The point is that we don't have to face the issue. That is the reality. Unilaterally, we can sell right now the cargo to a different destination and not to, let's get involved with the ETS or FuelEU, where as an owner which hold the DOC must do it. They don't have an escape route on that. So whether or not they decide to trade that area, they need to be prepared to do so. So they need to be studied in advance. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, if I can just build on this, Salva, because you touched a very interesting point, which could take me, because you've mentioned as a charter you don't need to do it. Maybe specifically when you look at FuelEU Maritime, and then the fact is EU ETS, is just limited geographically for time being. Perhaps you have options, but if you look at this, I mean, it's a question to you. I'm curious, but if you look at this from the global perspective, and if you fast forward to 2030, 2035, and you look at anyone charter's degree of preparedness to deal with decarbonization, that's going to have, I would argue, I mean, that's been my argument for the last 3 years, a detrimental impact on competitive advantage, right? Because at one point right now, for the next 5 years, this is, for example, how technology adoption curve was seen by UMass 2-3 years ago. So nothing really is happening major until 2030. It's still very much the learning phase. But eventually, like with anything, once we have 5 to 10% market penetration and technology improves, then the market takes off. And the question is, okay, that was the case for containerization. This was the case, as a matter of fact, when we had a transition from sail to steam back in 19th century. And then if you look at this, from again, from the technology adoption curve, where are you going to be, early or late, majority or laggard, will make you or break you as a business. Which takes me to the next question, which is going to connect with this. Speaking of strategies, this is Kissinger Cross, which is one of the frameworks to assess the risk. So right now you have a lot of freedom of action, but it's quantum mechanics when you look at decarbonization at large, the FuelEU Maritime. But you can engage into experimenting, learning. It can be costly, but fast forward 5-10 years from now, when information is no longer an issue, there is plenty of clarity. The room for freedom of action is gone. I'm curious if any of you, Salva, or you, Pasquale, looking at that from the owners or charter's perspective, if you have any thoughts, how you as a company think of that. In other words, perhaps let me try to rephrase it. Maybe that's going to make sense. You can look, broadly speaking, at FuelEU Maritime through the lens of compliance. Okay, you're going to have to do it because this is what it is. This is one way of looking. Everybody's going to have to do it, so you have to comply. But and it seems to me, this is how you guys look at this. If you take an early stand, you can also look at this through the lens of opportunity. That is to say, if you you high on the learning curve, perhaps you'll be ahead of the game vis-a-vis your competitors, perhaps as and when you deal with your charters, your clients, you have the knowledge that in collaboration with your chartering department can get you ahead and can, I don't know, move the needle that you're going to get the business and not the guy who's behind.
Yeah, actually, as I was trying to say during my introduction, we see FuelEU Maritime as a trial, and for sure a trial for an opportunity, because at the end it's true that it's a regional, let's say, enforcement, but at the end is impacting your carbon footprint. So it's a trial because you are going to implement a strategy in order to burn a certain quantity of different fuel, let's say biofuel in our case, and at the same time it's an opportunity because you can collect a surplus that you can trade in a pooling system. You can borrow, understand how to let other vessels comply, and we believe that in the near future we are going to have a big FuelEU Maritime internationally. So this could be a good chance to understand what is the best option. Of course, I mainly speak about biofuel that is the base of our strategy, but we are going also to understand other technologies, how are going to impact on our carbon footprint, like OPS or wind assisted propulsion, carbon capture. So it's a starting point. So for sure the change is there. So we cannot escape from that. And of course the enforcement by regulation, it lets you move faster. So we see as an opportunity more than legal compliance for sure.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. Salva, I'm curious. I'm sorry if I challenge you a little bit on that view, but I'm curious whether you share that approach. Is it more of a compliance?
No, not at all. Sorry, but I was kind of actually replying to Orestis when he was mentioning it. Then the charter are more on denial, exactly. Yeah. So that was my the reason of my answer. My answer was simply says we have there is an option there. Now, I completely agree that play in advance is always a winning situation, and let's put it this way, or let me rephrase my answer. We have the luxury to have a little bit more time to see the wide picture, i.e. the implementation globally, rather than segregate on what the Europe will do. So the experimental phase that will be, which has been done actually for ETS, and as well the one will coming for FuelEU, will help us to see that. As an example, Pasquale was mentioned about the CP clause coming into the market with ETS and FuelEU at a different at a delay compared to the enforcement of the regulation. No? Okay. There was as well the understanding and there was expectation the ETS would have jumped straight away, and what happens when you get into the force? The actually costs went down. So again, as we are in an experimental phase altogether, is a learning curve as well. So it's like a child. There are someone start to crawl and stand up faster than the other, but eventually all of them are up and running. Is it just a question how you? I think probably this is the more correct example. It takes time for different angle of the industry to get there. That is depends as well as you were saying on the strategy of the company, and is what you are seeing, in which kind of business you are involved with too, and many other different factors. I can tell you that we have we have the full chain. We have all our sustainability team not related to the freight, having a different project and application already in place from since years already. So again, it's a question of where you are in this process and what is your final score. That is similar from some owner as well. For instance, the biggest answer or question we ask from the owner, we have from our close owner is, do we go on a methanol vessel, for example? Do we invest on that? Is it better to follow the biofuel process, which is a more safe approach? there are all these questions around. And again, as us that we are pretty much involved with international trade, and Europe in this case as a percentage in our total volume, we are carefully studying, doing experiment in a different ways, which suits our business model best. As an example, is on the fuel availability. Perhaps for some reason on the Trump will make more sense have a CO2 capture unit rather than utilize biofuel, just simply because you can use everywhere and even this application is always there. While biofuel is really depends where the availability you're gonna have. So
well, thank you. I love the metaphor of crawling and everybody eventually we all run. It's a very cool metaphor. But let me just connect, this question as a biofuel, methanol, whatnot. I actually have one poll that I like to run, and I'm curious what is the thinking in the audience. Let me run this. Do you see that? Yes. What alternative fuel do you think will become most predominant in maritime shipping by 2030, including the panelists? Please vote now. Okay, biofuels so far in the lead. Interesting. Okay. Some people are still processing that, but biofuels are way ahead. Very interesting. Okay. Biofuels, LNG, and the methanols, ammonia way back. Okay, super interesting. Excellent. Julie, may I take it to you? So, when you hear how an owner represented by Pasquale or a charter is looking at that, I'm curious specifically, what are the ways in which you can support your clients to in fact capture this opportunity, how you can help them to become more competitive by being more effective in procuring?
Yeah, but one of the things we can definitely assist with, again already now, is we can assist in breaking down the silos in the companies, right? Which also is going to, it's all the way from the vessel and with the vessel reporting and also the offices reporting and compliance into the platform. So what we have is that we, of course, have the system which is giving or having a full methodology behind it to give as accurate calculations as possible as the system is feeded with. And that's, of course, giving an instant helping hand here and now, instead of having to go to different departments with different knowledge and so on. So what we give is how much do you need, or how much is your EU ETS? How much do you need in order to comply? What is the price? So instantly by hand you will have everything available. And I could also see there was one of the questions in the Q&A asking, so how can you actually be be up to date on what is the actual fuel burned in the tanks and how can it lead into bunker procurement, right? And only by doing that you can't sit in your Excel sheet anymore. You simply need some platforms which is assisting you and collaborating between departments instead of individualism. Being working on individually from department to department. So that's what we are trying to assist with. We try to break down the silo and to have the collaboration between the departments.
Thank you for that. Orestis, if I were to take the same question to you, and then perhaps if you look at the questions in the Q&A, whether they could also perhaps give you some food for thought. How do you work with your clients in a way that can, the way that you offer information, how you work with the clients to help them maybe not only to comply but perhaps eventually capture opportunity when you look at that regulation?
Yeah, no, the thing about opportunity is very important on this sense because one personal criticism on the regulations is that they only have the stick and not the carrot. So it would have been nice if they had a bit of carrots to drive to make it more appealing, let's say, for the all the parties to participate. So these opportunities, I think it's about communication and synergies, because what we see, whether you are a bunker supplier and a charter or an owner, like Pasquale mentioned about like bunkering in batch rather than having spots, it's about creating these synergies and these these synergies, our communication, in order to be able, I can assist Pasquale can assist me, or I can assist Salvatore. It's a both stream opportunity, let's say. So it's about, yes, creating the bridges within the industry, from owner, charter, and bunker supplier, in order to be able to capitalize these opportunities as they are, because they are opportunities, because otherwise this regulation would have just been an added fuel cost.
Thank you. Time is flying fast when you have a good time. In 7 minutes, we're going to hit hour and a half. So may I just ask each of you to sort of like capture, what's emerging for you? What is the key message that you would like to leave the audience with today? Who would like to start?
Yeah, I can start. Following what Julie was mentioning, I'm lucky that, let's say, following with departments under 20 vessels, including third parties, I can see also what the, let's say, Julie competitors are delivering as softwares. We are also managing vessels under StormGeo. I can say that is a very good software. Internally, we, as strategy, we have chosen to proceed with internal, let's say, tool, interfacing with tools like StormGeo and other competitors. But the big challenge that still has to to be digested by the industry is to have trusted data. So the way to have trusted data are there, technology is there, the frequency, it's not an issue anymore, and really having trust in data, it's the key, according to us, because it's the only way to understand how your patient is doing, in what condition the vessel is performing, and only understanding well your emissions, you can plan for the future, and also taking new order book consideration. So it's the best way to deliver your let's say to drive your future plan. Of course, one of important change that we have to do as an owner. So together with our stakeholders is to have clarity. So sharing full information, do not have any more asymmetric information. So when we plan the charter party, this has to be done together. It's not anymore I'm the owner, you are the charters. So should be a good collaboration between charters, operator, and ship staff, of course, because at the end they are on board, and the owner and technical department can only, how to say, move different actors in order to succeed in our final goal.
Okay, so let me just recap that. There's a lot of it. So first, I think connecting with what you mentioned at the beginning, understand your mission, right? Understand, right? Because you cannot really manage what you cannot measure, and to have the reliable way to measuring that, you need to have trustworthy data. That's one message. Then the other one is you need to have the clarity of the roles involved and the collaboration. Bring everybody on board to make it a success. Do I reflect? Yeah. Okay.
Change of culture should be there, of course.
Yeah. Got that. Let's just switch the sequence. Orestis, over to you. What's the key message from you, if I may ask?
Okay, thank you for putting me in second, because I think we will have a common thread. I was planning.
Busy, otherwise we go the same
direction. Pasquale mentioned it, but being mindful of the time, I think the key message is okay, to understand what is the scope of the regulation rather than the technicalities. I think that will assist a lot the conversations that each one of us will have with the external parties and internally. And I think that when I started my ops career, someone told me, if you fail to prepare, you prepare to fail. But I always replied, and I think that's a key message here, is that flexibility and adaptability must be always a key on the discussions, and also as a strategy must be high, because the environment is changing, the regulations are changing, the shipping and market are changing. It takes only one geopolitical event to completely see where you will bunker, for example. Will it be south of Africa, or you will have to take more in Singapore? So being flexible and adaptable is something that each companies should have high on their priorities.
Okay, so big picture on the one hand, rather than the nitty-gritty. See the big picture and stay flexible, stay adaptable. Okay, awesome. Julie, if I can take it to you, what's the key message from you?
Yeah, I think mine is very short. It's be curious, and then do not be afraid to be transparent in your work. I think we all need to understand that that we have to collaborate within the industry. That counts also, even if it's your competitor. So I think that's very short from my side. I mean, we need to think shipping in a different way. This is at least in my time. I've only been in shipping for 18 years, but at least in my time, this is one of the biggest regulations coming into force, right? And I think as mentioned earlier, it's only the beginning. So I think people should not be afraid of taking a solution or jump on the train while it's still at the platform. Because when it starts to drive, then it might be too late, or at least you will be way behind your competitors. So I think it's better to cooperate and be transparent rather than sit and wait.
Okay, I like the curiosity. I mean, actually, the topic of the thesis I've written in change management was the importance of being curious. So that's music to my ears. And then you say, okay, don't be afraid to take a risk, because the train might just as well take off. Okay, great. Salva.
Last one. I would call it in, I would say, just reward, transparency, collaboration, and compromise.
Transparency.
If we don't compromise, we will not win. And we have to be accountable for our decision and collaborate with our counterparty. We are very lucky that we work with the same owner over and over the years. As a Cofco International, we have about 200 vessels at any given day of the year in the water. And the fact that we have this long relationship and we collaborate, we can pick up the phone, speak with them, and face issue and compromise for mutual benefit.
Thank you. So transparency, collaboration, and the relationships. That's great. And I want to share my take on this, which connects to what we discussed. That I come perhaps with a bit of a bias of change management, but it's built on what I did in conventional shipping, which is a highly competitive business with low margin. And so the name of my company is Seamind Blue Ocean. I deeply believe in a blue ocean strategy. And the idea of blue ocean strategy is that, and connected to FuelEU Maritime and decarbonization, that is this complexity that majority of stakeholders in the industry not necessarily want to embrace is an opportunity to build a niche, because it's otherwise quite difficult to compete. But anyway, so with that, I just wanted to, let me just switch off the sharing right now, one sec. I just wanted to thank all of you for being a part of this very interesting discussion. Thank you so much for your contribution, and thank you to BS Navigation for organizing that, and for everybody in the audience for asking questions and being a part of this discussion. And until we meet next time, perhaps not so long from now, considering the complexity of that. So thank you so very much. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.